I have mixed up some Cerulean blue and some Cinnerous blue. I really loaded my size 14 brush there, loading it with the Cinnerous blue and then the Cerulean blue. I think a little bit of the Phthalocyannine blue got into that Cinnerous blue there in my palette, but not to worry, I've actually added a little bit as well. It's a darker blue. If you don't have that blue, don't worry, you could use something like Prussian blue or turquoise. And I'm going to continue on now, painting wet into wet, this gorgeous blue background. So while the paper's drying off a little bit, I'm using some wax resist here and I'm going to rub it on to the paper surface, which is dry, just to create some light and texture for this fence here. And now I'm using a little bit of Naples yellow, but you could use raw sienna or quinacridone gold. I've added a little bit of burnt sienna there as well, a little bit more of the Naples yellow, just to get some lighter colour washes on there. And I'm also going to paint a little bit of the dark brown as well, just to build up the tonal values here. I'm just painting a bit of dark brown next to where the imaginary snow has fallen on the top of the fence there, just to create some darks, pulling that down as well with my damp brush. I've mixed up some ultramarine now with you can use burnt sienna or burnt umber. I'm just sort of painting this now to create a bit more shadow where the snow is sort of covering the fence there just underneath. I'm using table salt now. I'm sprinkling it onto the damp surface. There's still a sheen on the paper. I'm using some Brusho. You don't have to do this. It's light brown and I'm sprinkling this onto the damp surface, tapping the little drum. I've got a little hole pierced in the top there and I'm just creating a little bit of texture and using my cocktail stick and sort of scratching into the Brusho into the damp surface just to create some more marks, and it picks up that Brusho to create some darker linear mark. And it's a good time to allow your painting to dry naturally, to allow the salt to work. And as you can see here, the salt has worked. So I'm brushing the salt off the dry paper with a paper towel. You want to get rid of your salt before you start doing any more work. So I'm painting my robin now, wet into wet, using some of the Indian yellow. You could use some cadmium yellow, a little bit of red, the French Vermillion and bright red, but you could use cadmium red and alizarin crimson mixed with red as well. And I'm using my size 10 brush, painting wet into wet. I've mixed some ultramarine into that orangey red wash and I'm painting the back of the bird here with my size 6 brush, painting wet on dry, adding some darks as I go. So I'm painting the beak now. I have got a little bit of masking fluid on there as well, so it's resisting slightly. But I'm using my size 6 brush with some ultramarine and burnt sienna mixed to make that lovely sort of light grey. And I'm using the same colour now to paint the eye of the robin, which has also been masked out in the centre there. So I'm painting wet on dry and then softening as I go. I'm using this mixture of ultramarine and burnt sienna, more on the brown side than the blue-grey side, working wet on dry. And I've used a little bit of red with that ultramarine and the orange wash, which made that brown, and painting this sort of damp into damp to sort of show some sort of shadow colours in the red breasted area of the robin there, working damp into damp. So it's a really good time to allow your painting to dry. Next, I'm going to be using the bokeh technique. So I've got a big bowl of water there, my paper towel. I've got a natural sponge, but you could use a synthetic sponge or a magic sponge, a stencil, and I'm going to be demonstrating other techniques as well of lifting off. I'm using a small synthetic brush called an eradicator brush. Details about that can be found in the description, but just lifting off smaller circles without using a stencil. I'm also going to use a stencil brush to do the same. That was fun to do and quite therapeutic. So I am painting in the eye of the robin here using a little bit of black actually. I'm painting in the beak using a bit of Paynes grey and sort of trying to form the shape of the eye there. And I'm actually painting in some of the dark of the wings as well, using a little bit of the ultramarine and burnt umber, just painting in wet on dry some of the details with my size 4 brush. I've mixed up a very thin wash of ultramarine with a tiny touch of burnt sienna, and I'm glazing here pretty much wet on dry. The washes have dried off quite a bit there, and just putting this very thin transparent wash, glazing it over some of the robin here where you can see soft shadow colours. I don't want it too dark, I just want these soft shadows there. Ultramarine's a great sort of colour to paint shadow colours with a pinch of burnt sienna. So I think it's a good time to allow the painting to dry. And what I'm doing now is it's thoroughly dry. I'm removing the masking fluid with a paper towel. You can use your thumb or some framing tape or masking tape as well, or even a plastic eraser to remove all of this masking fluid. And as you can see, I've got that lovely snow on the top of the fence there. And what I'm doing now is just glazing over the top of the eye and then lifting off with my paper towel, so you've got that sort of soft light in the eye. I'm painting a little bit of dark on the beak there and just softening as well, just to form sort of the mid-tones and dark shadows on the beak there using my size 2 brush. I'm also using the size 2 brush. I've got some red and yellow mixed here, and I'm just sort of painting in some of the detail of the feathers there, just making little marks there, painting wet on dry. I thought it'd be quite nice to add a little bit more dark just underneath the beak there where there's a dark shadow, and just using ultramarine and burnt sienna again with my size 2 brush, wet on dry, just sort of filling in, because obviously when you take masking fluid off you've got all these marks, you've got to sort of make sense of them. So I'm just sort of glazing in and painting in some of the darks on the wing there, using, actually it could have been even a bit of black and brown, and this is the very watered down orange and ultramarine there. So using all these sort of natural dark sort of colours here and softening some of the lighter colours as well, and just filling in there, creating texture on the robin. Again, I'm mixing up very dilute ultramarine and painting that in because there's some lovely cooler colours at the back of the bird there and just around the edge of the wing here as well. And you can just build these details up and just take your time, you know, creating these marks here. Just try to keep your light. I'm using my size 4 brush here and just painting wet on dry some of the darks on the robin's legs and the feet as well. I'm using burnt sienna, ultramarine, but you could even use a bit of Paynes grey in here. As you saw there, I actually painted some darks on the feathers and underneath the wing as well. It's just to create, you know, these darks and details now and shadow colours that bring the robin to life as well. Again, I'm diluting this ultramarine wash. If it looks a bit too blue, just add a tiny bit of burnt sienna. It'll just take that sort of blue toned colour down a little bit. I'm painting this just at the sort of bottom of the snow, or where I've removed the masking fluid, to create a little bit of shadow. Working wet on dry using my size 10 brush. So I'm allowing my painting to dry again, and I'm using that little eradicator brush, but you can use a little synthetic brush, and I'm just softening the feathers to create that lovely feathery sort of fluffy look, for want of a better word. Now I am wetting all of the red area here with my size 10 brush with clean water, and just dropping in there a little bit of the bright red wet in wet with my size 10 brush, just to give a bit more colour. So I'm using some white gouache here straight from the tube, literally. I'm using my size 2 brush. I'm just painting a white highlight in the eye of the robin just to bring him to life. Working around the eye using a little bit of white just to lighten up around the eye, because the eye to me is the sort of focus of interest. I really want to bring all the life is in that eye of the robin then. I really want to bring it to life. So it's a good idea to allow your painting to dry. I'm just introducing a little bit of light onto the robin there on the wings, just to create that feathery look as well, where the white the feathers are here and there. Using my size 4 brush, it really kind of brings the little robin to life, and even around the edge of the robin as well. It's a good idea to allow your painting to dry for this next stage, and it's just really using some ultramarine. I'm using Cobalt Violet Light as well, but you could just add any pink here, and I'm just glazing wet on dry some shadows there, but I wanted some colourful shadows. shadows. That's why I added the cobalt violet light, but as I say, you can add pink and just glaze some of this soft shadow onto the robin there using my size 10 brush, just to really develop and create a sort of a 3D look, so you could almost pick up this robin. I'm just using some white again, straight from the tube, using my size 10 brush and just painting some of that really white feathers right in the sort of center there, working damp into that shadow color as well. I'm using the yellow with a touch of red and a little bit of the white gouache, and just painting wet on dry here some of the light feathers there. So it's a good time again to allow your painting to dry. I really enjoyed painting this robin, but I was in danger of overworking him, so I thought, spattering to the rescue here. So I've watered down the white gouache using my size 10 brush, and I'm spattering wet on dry some of the white gouache there to create the look of snow, and it's lovely just to finish off this painting as well. I was hoping one of those spatters would go into the eye of the robin, but it didn't, so I'm just adding a tiny little highlight in the robin's eye to finish off. I'm removing my washi tape to reveal a nice white border, which is a lovely way of presenting your watercolours, but also it gives you a chance to see if you need to do any more. I think I'll leave it there for now, but I really enjoyed painting this. I hope it will inspire you to have a go using all of these fun techniques and maybe creating a Christmas card as well. If you have any questions about this tutorial, please put them in the comments section below. And if you'd like to see more tutorials like this, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, where you will get updates of my latest videos. If you'd like to learn more about watercolour and watch longer, more in-depth tutorials with access to downloadable documents, why not check out my Patreon membership? Details about that can be found on screen or in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Happy painting. Bye for now.